quick time check. It's 4:42. I do have a 10 to 15 minutes time slot for Clemon to take you to the audits. So we will go ahead with your question, and then we want to have a couple minutes in the end for questions. Did you still have a question, Venu?
Okay, I'll wait till end of the.
Okay, perfect. After you, Clemon, welcoming our new Associate Director of Academics for ISACA GWDC. He is, I guess, let him speak for himself with his career, how he is into auditing. I know a lot of students here are interested in pursuing that career. You heard ISACA, you heard CISA, and now we want to take you to the real world of audit. Off to you, Clemon.
Thank you, Ruchi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clemon Joseph. I'm excited to be here. I have some special passion with the University of Maryland. I actually went to Maryland for my undergraduate program where I double majored in accounting and IT. And one of the reasons I double majored in that is that I definitely saw that my career outlook in terms of using those disciplines was going to be very beneficial. As Clifton talked about, I kind of started my career back in the Sarbanes-Oxley era. So when Enron went down and saw the scandals and CFOs had to sign off for this financial statements, that's how my career kicked off at Deloitte. And I started off as an IT auditor, and I had a lot of fun doing a lot of SOX engagements. That's Sarbanes and Oxley, for those that you may not know what that is. And it's a great time just to really delve into the issues of what does it take to get a good financial report, to get a certified report. And whereas prior to Sarbanes-Oxley, a lot of the definition of getting a good clean audit was really driven by our CPAs and our financial auditors. But what Sarbanes-Oxley is, we realized that we had to really bring in the system auditors as well, because think about all the reports that come from a government agency or from any institution. They come from a computer system. And so the question was, well, the financial auditors used to pretty much run the show in terms of defining whether or not there's clean audits, but they really had to point toward the IT auditors such as myself and the teams that I supported to make sure that the underlying systems could support good controls, as Clifton was talking about, good access controls, change management controls. Because if you have good controls in your financial ledgers and your general ledgers, then it's more likely that the financial reports that come out of the information is going to be pretty much secure. So that's pretty much an overall gist of my career. And I just want to kind of give you just a high level gist of what an IT audit looks like in the next couple of slides. All right. So an IT auditor, as I had hinted on before, identifies ways to help an organization meet and review configuration of hardware and software. And IT audits are best done in teams. You never want to do this alone because everyone has different skill sets. We pretty much saw a great list of Clifton showing different certifications that ISACA prevents, and the expectation that everyone has to get every single certifications. But once you get to CISA, which is known as the gold standard, you will be working with a team of other people that might be other certifications. You might be working with CPAs. You might be working with fraud examiners. So it's always good to work with a team, even though most of my role has been as an IT auditor. Next slide, please.
Please mute if you're not presenting. Here we go. Beautiful.
Awesome. So this is just pretty much an overview of what an ITGC audit looks like. And ITGC, that stands for Internal IT General Controls. And a lot of foundation of IT audits are built on this foundation here. And as you can see in this graphic here, there are controls that we look at that have different layers. You want to look at the application layer, the database layer, the operating system, and the network. And in all those layers, we want to ask the question, as Clifton kind of hinted towards and kind of related when he's talking about the certifications, like what are the access security for those controls, or what are the change controls, or what are the data security? And there's a lot of commonality of when you're talking about what system controls you're looking for. You want to know how they apply to the different layers of computers, because we don't just look at the front-end applications. Like when you log into a system, or when you log into your banking application, you're logging into the front-end application of being an end user. But there's a lot of other layers in terms of your computer system. There's obviously the operating system. We're very familiar with Windows operating system for our personal use, but businesses have different operating systems that they invest in. And so we want to look at the access control for those information too. It's not just good enough to look at the password control for a particular application, such as Capital One banking system or your payroll system. we want to look at the access controls too for the operating systems that these applications sit on, and also the change control as well. So this is just a graphic, just getting an idea of sense of the different elements that I have looked over my professional career for the past 17 years, and what typically system auditors look like in order to audit a system. Next slide, please.
I must tell you that the UMGC Masters of Cyber Accounting was built with the guidance of ISACA. We have an IT auditing class. When you think of CISA, you think of UMGC and the Master of Cyber Accounting. And I do want to thank Dr. Sherry Levin, who's here, because she absolutely is a leader in that course. She's the author. Now, one of the authors. It was a team approach. But let us go on to the next slide. Back to you, Clemens.
Thank you. When we talk about controls, there are 4 types of internal controls and that IT auditors should be aware of. And actually, all auditors should be aware of all these types of controls, regardless of whether they're IT or financial auditor. And they're pretty much listed out there. You have your manual controls in the far left, your IT dependent manual controls, and then your application controls and your IT general controls. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the general controls are pretty much the foundations of all your system controls. And what I mean by foundation is that you may have strong manual controls, a strong manual IT dependent or strong application controls, but if in the far right, your general controls are weak, think about it like a pyramid. Everything sits on top of those general controls. If those are not pretty much set stage, then there's many areas where you can break into your application, even though your application might have strong security controls. If your general controls are not strong and foundational, then it will lead to a very lot of risk for your organization. Your manual controls, well, it sounds like what it says, manual controls. Manual controls is what typically financial auditors sometimes do, or what they look for is to make sure that, hey, is someone signing off? Or is there 2 people signing off on a check before it's printed out? That's a manual process because that involves human element. Or do you have a supervisory review before a check is written from an organization by a certifier to say that the balances agree? That's a manual control. But what a lot of our systems do, because of obviously we live in a digital computer age, we have a lot of systems that actually can do a lot of these functions. And as IT auditors, we look at those IT manual controls or application controls as well. And that's where we focus our areas. And financial auditors typically look at those manual controls and they have to do a lot of sampling. You probably hear financial auditors like, we have to get a sample of 50 or 100 transactions just to get comfort that a business process is operating. Well, you want to know where the value of an IT auditor comes in place? This says, well, why a financial auditor has to look at 50 or 100 samples to see if a business process is secure. And IT auditor says, well, tell me your system. Let me see the configuration. Let me see your access. Let me see your super users. Let me take a list of that. And I just need to do a test of 1. And I can give you a big picture of whether or not there's a good process for your business and organization. That's the value of an IT auditor. That's what Clifton was talking about. Is like, if you can get that system or you can get anything around that, you have great value to the business community in terms of shortening the amount of time of testing and evaluation that financial auditors typically cannot do on their own. Next slide, please. In an audit phase, and this is a very simplified approach, when we go to in a professional arena, they'll break this down into even further ones, but for discussion purposes, you have a pre-audit phase, an audit phase, and a post-audit phase. And as we go to the next slide, the pre-audit phase, this is where you want to define the scope of the objectives of the audit. There are many types of audits. There's fraud audits, there's financial audits, or IT audits, there's organizational audits. You want to be able to help tell your client, hey, if you're hiring us, you put this in the engagement letter, this is the type of audit we're going to perform for your organization. You want to be very upfront with your client to let them know what you're doing, because you don't want to be spending time and resources auditing something that's not important to the organization. So that's why we're talking about you want to define that scope. You want to look at past audits to see what are some of the past issues. A lot of this information is available on publicly domains in terms of the internet, past GAO reports or audit reports. All that information is made available. The more you can read about the past audit reports, the more leg up you can go back to your client and say, well, you've had issues with stuff in the past. Where are you with these issues and where can we focus our time? Then you want to develop an audit plan and checklists and site surveys to help prepare for that audit as well. Next slide, please. In the audit, you actually implement a lot of those plans that you set up before. You have those site surveys. You actually meet with the site managers to talk about what is your business process? How many systems support your business process? What's your payroll process? What's your HR process? What are these different systems that help manage your business? And you want to collect data. And a lot of times it's IT auditors will have access to their systems where you can be able to collect data, and you'll be able to interview staff as well to be like, well, how do you use this data? You know, when you do your business, when you're processing payroll or transactions, how do you do this? And you actually interview the staff, and you want to let them know about what they do. Because it's not just good enough to, we all just policies and procedures in every company. There's policies and procedures from the University of Maryland. Like, we don't want to simply rely on policies and procedures because that's just a paper exercise. But when we actually interview the people that's actually performing those policies and procedures, that's when the IT auditor can gain some insight into what's actually happening. And that includes vulnerability assessments. And once you're done, you'll do an exit meeting towards that end. Next slide, please. And in the post audit, this is when you want to prepare your detailed audit report. This is not very different, what you know as a 10K or the financial report that most commercial entities report, or in the government, they have different types of names for them. But this is where you want to, the final audit report that's going to sit on top of the financial report, because the agency or the company that you're supporting is going to produce financial statements saying, we made billions of dollars this year and we spent, 700,000. As an auditor, you want to have a report to summarize all your findings to say, well, were there control issues and gaps that led to the reliability of all that information that's on that report? If that is, you have to disclose that in the audit report. And that audit report is gold standard. That's what investors rely on to make sure that what the companies are reporting is actually accurate and true to what the companies are portraying on the information. And so that's what we include in this report. We have the detailed audit findings, documents and references, and materials and findings as well. Next slide. And just to wrap up to the next 2 slides here, we just have a few minutes left. Let's wait for the advance. There we go. So we have application audit. Because this is going to be given, these slides are going to be given to you after this. I'm not going to read through each bullet point, but just want to let you know a lot of things I've talked about has been covered here as well. There's, you audit the application, whether that's a payroll application, an HR system, whatever type of business process. Every business process that happens in a company is typically an application that supports that. And so we want to make sure we look at those components to audit that. Next slide, please. Within the application, every application generally has inputs and processing outputs. You have to put information to an application, correct? That application does the work of processing it, and then it produces reports, which are the outputs. As an IT auditor, you want to look at all 3 of those controls in all of those areas, the inputs, the processing, and the outputs, to make sure that what the information is coming is accurate, complete, and valid. Next slide, please. Application audits help you define what logical security is. And it's where you look at the creation of user accounts. This is very important because just imagine that, if you want to log into your banking system, there might be multiple people that can have the same ID and password that you have to log into your bank and to access your records. That would be insane. Well, that's what IT auditors look like for other systems, for other companies and agencies. We want to make sure that the logical access, not many people can get into a particular system. There's different rules and regulations or sets to make sure that only the people that have authority to get access actually have access. Next slide, please. And if your system goes down, you want to have a plan to make sure you can bring it up. I know it's very frustrating. Sometimes we even want to access things on our phones and it was going through a system update. Well, just think about if there's something that crashed to a server or to a company, they want to have like a plan to be able to build things up very quickly for their customers. And the last 2 slides. Change control, I talked about. Change systems are not stagnant. They all go through changes. And so we want to make sure that as a system is going through a change, that there's a proper approvals to go through those changes so they're accurate and complete. And the next slide. And it brings us back home to what I was talking about, the general controls. These are some of the basics of what is included in general controls. And the last slide has the same graphic that we had brought up before, just so you can have a visual of what we talked about today. I want to thank you all for listening to that, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Clemens. I just want to say Clemens has the most interesting background, and I've complimented him on it when we saw it previously. I want to launch a couple polls. I have walked around a lot in the Maryland area and talked to so many wonderful people. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people, they're not all CPAs. A lot of them aren't CPAs. Now we have a new poll out, poll number 5, okay? And the thing is that in my experience, not all the CISAs were actually auditors. You are either going to be the auditor, or you may be at an organization where you're going to be audited, or you're preparing for the audit. And to have that mindset, that skepticism, to understand what's going to happen next is very important. Is there anything you can speak to that, Clemens, about why, even if you're not the auditor, these are important?
Absolutely. That's such a great question, because I'll tell you, during my career, as working as a IT auditor, I've helped agencies get ready for audits, or whether or not it's commercial companies. And one of the things I always had to tell my client is saying, you know what, I am not the auditor, but guess what? I know what the auditor is going to ask you. So the more time you spend with me to kind of give you a breakdown of your systems, your organizations, and everything that is the insights to your company, and you share that with me in confidence, and we work together, guess what? I can prepare you for the auditors to pass an audit. And if not to pass the first year, at least to get you ready to pass. Because that's what the business is that the skill set for being an auditor, whether or not you're being audited or you're auditing yourself, is pretty much the same. It's like having lawyers on both sides of a client. Well, both lawyers know the law and they know exactly how to be able to interpret it. So whether or not you're being audited or not being audited, you can be on both sides of that, and that's been great. For most of my career, I've been helping my institutions, whether or not it's been federal agencies, which I've been doing for the past, I guess, probably about 10 years, or when I started off my career at commercial entities with Sarbanes-Oxley, I've been helping them prepare for audits. And that's making sure that I have more access to the site managers, the people, and the policies and procedures, so that when the auditors come, I would help the client or the government prepare packages to say, you know what, we got our documentation straight, or we defined our processes. And even if there might be audits and things that they may pinpoint, we will be front and head to help them remediate those audit findings, so that by next year, they'll be in a better position. So yes, you'll either be audited or be the one to audit, but it requires the same skill set.
The technology and certifications, along with all your other qualifications and education in accounting, auditing, and business, will open doors. And I want to share this next poll with Clemens, just to talk about the fact that management and advisory services, people work in the internal audit area, but they're not really always internal audits. That's like the internal management company. Can you just talk a little bit about management advisory services and internal audit, and again, why certification is important?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned before, the skill sets required for an external auditor, it's the same skill set that's required for an internal auditor. Unfortunately, sometimes the same credence and the level of recognition is not always seen in the business community, but the skill sets are pretty much the same. And so whether or not you get your certification, whether that's a CISA, from an IT standpoint, if you want, or if you're more financial, you go on the CPA route, or if you want to go more governmental, which I did, I'm a CDFM, I'm a Certified Defense Financial Manager. Whatever certification you do have, it's going to be important, it's going to be relevant. I personally like starting off being on the internal audit side or the management consultant side. Why do I say that? Well, the client's a little bit more opened up to you to give you access to their systems, to give you more of a dialogue in terms of what are some of the issues impacting the organization. Because whenever you say the term auditor, like an external agency is coming to audit your system or audit your organization, write a report, it kind of brings jitters and it kind of puts people at edge. But if you're more of a management consultant, I'm more internal auditor, I have the same skill set, I have certifications, but I'm not here to write up the report. I'm here to be able to detail the things so you can be prepared for those reports. You have much more success in terms of gaining the trust of your client. Because at the end of the day, with these skill sets, your clients are looking for you to help know what the problems are, diagnose them, and help remediate them before the auditors come and, you know, what the business community would say, write them up, so to speak.
Back to you, Rushi.
Thank you. And I know we are 2 minutes past, but thank you, Clemon. That was great insights into the real world of audit without taking much time. We have all the links here for the community to join the student membership, general membership, CISA certification that we have talked about, and get into the world of audit. Next and last slide, I believe, is just the questions, Kathleen. If we still have any, I think given the time, Venu already had her hand up. Venu, do you want to go real quick?
Please go ahead and unmute yourself if someone has a question. And just remember that we're all working together. So we will provide this to everyone who registered for this event. We'll send out the slides. Okay, Rushi, we're okay with that?
Yes.
And but we work very closely with ISACA, and we really want you to start looking at the calendar and thinking of ways how to become involved, and also to look for more events that UMGC Accounting is presenting, because we are really looking forward to helping you. And also, as UMGC accounting students, you know that you are looking at SEC 10Ks. And if you take our federal financial management class, you'll be looking at a lot of risk management and government reports, because we look for things that are publicly available for you. So I just want to share with our host today, who helped us out, that the presentation was valuable to people. We have people that are interested in ISACA. You guys just have to contact me and I'll make sure and get this all back to Rushi. But we so thank each of you for attending. And anything else anyone wants to say? Clemens and Prasad and Bonita and Rushi, thank you. This was tremendous. Thank you.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. And just
Thank
shout
you.
out again that we have our annual meeting coming up. We will have a special table reserved for academic institutions in the DMV. It's limited per institution. So if there is somebody who's interested, and all of us who are speaking here would be there, you want to hear more from Clemon, hopefully he'll be there for the event too. And you can really pick on our brains, form connections. And like Bonita said, there will be a great meal too, and the networking tickets. Also, reminder that we do have more associate director positions open across different directorship at the board. So if somebody is interested, please route yourself through Kathleen. Last but not the least, we have some free student memberships to give away. Please ping Kathleen and she is in touch with me. We will make it happen for you. Thank you all.
Well, thank each of you for being here, and a big, oh, hello, Alex. So good to see you. And again, a big thank you to Sherry Levin, because she was one of the first people who introduced me to ISACA. So thank you, everyone. And Jeff Pullen.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, we're going to get ready. Thank you. We're going to get ready to close it down. Clemon, it was so good to meet you, and Bonita. We ready? Okay. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you
Have a
for
good one.
attending. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.